States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Here we go. So the first item is the approval of the warrant. Okay.
Second?
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
The chair votes aye, that's 5-0-0.
We're gonna
Oh,
abstain.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. All those opposed? Those abstaining?
Aye.
Okay, that's 3-0-2. Thank you. And now the next item is the approval of the minutes of May 28th.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
This is the minutes, right?
This is the minutes of May 28th.
Aye.
Aye. And the chair votes aye. I think that was 5-0-0, is that right? Yes? Okay. And approval of the minutes of June 11th.
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Aye.
The chair votes aye, so that's 4-0-1. Thank you. Is there someone here tonight for public participation for an item that is not already on the agenda? Okay. All right, seeing none. Are there any subcommittee reports tonight? Yes, Mr. Murphy.
At the Recreation Commission meeting last night, there was a question raised about the work that was being done to the playground behind Fox Hill School. I guess there were some deficiencies identified earlier in the year. And the rec guys were holding off until school was out to do some of the work, so they're going to be starting shortly. And the one question that they had, there's a slide, I guess, that goes out there that is either non-functional or broken or something. And they wanted to get the okay from school department before they start pulling things out of there, so I don't know if, Bob, if you have any. Bob?
So
Yeah.
thanks, Tom. I actually met with the rec department over there, the principal, Nicole, and then actually the president of the PTO. And we toured the whole site. We also agree that the slide, which was probably fun in the beginning and probably still fun for some, is slightly hazardous right now and a danger.
Okay.
So it's my recommendation to remove it as well.
Okay. They just want to double check before they started taking things out. That's all I had.
All right, any other subcommittee reports? I did not attend any subcommittees this last couple of weeks, but I did attend the Joint Committee on Education at the State House hearings today. And I had never been to State House hearings, and it was quite an education for me. There are bills being proposed regarding student safety, regarding preschool requirements, regarding gifted education, regarding banning school mascots for school districts that have that. There was a lot of really interesting conversation, and the committee sat all day and listened to people who came, so if there ever are bills that people feel they need to speak on, that's what these State House hearings are for. Just as if people have comments for school committee, we invite you to come and participate in the conversation if it's on the agenda or the public participation section. So next, we have one member of Ways and Means here right now. Do you have any updates or reports for us?
Nothing.
Okay. So now we have people from the Burlington Education Foundation. Thank you so much for coming, and that's just the first thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're joined tonight. Paula, are you, oh, excellent. So Paula, come on up. And every year we try to highlight the work of the Burlington Education Foundation. I'm going to let Patrick describe it a little bit, but one of the things that makes Burlington special is the Burlington Education Foundation and the work that they do to support innovation in our classrooms. And again, I just continue to be impressed with both the teachers' ideas that put forward to the foundation and the foundation's ability to support those ideas. So Patrick, you want to jump in?
I don't really have a lot to add. Just basically wanted to, again, we did this last year. I know I've done it the last few years, but just you can highlight some of the things that you've been able to do this year and some of the grants you've brought to classrooms and schools. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much for having us. We appreciate being able to speak with you all tonight. And we definitely have done quite a bit of work in our past 15 years. So in that time, we've actually awarded, excuse me, over $300,000 in grant funding. And I think Eric makes a good point that the teachers' ideas get more and more brilliant every year and have a wider reach to the student population. Excuse me. So last year alone, we awarded over $20,000 in grants, and we continue to see the number of grant requests and the average funding of the request increase. The average funding has increased to over $2,000 per grant on every occasion, which makes it a challenge for us to support in the sense that, you know, we want to continue to raise that funding. But some of the grants that I would highlight over the past year, the past school year that we've supported are sometimes very simple instruments or very complicated programs, right? So we run that whole gamut. Thank you very much. So this year, we actually awarded a grant for the Fit Step Pro Pedometer program, and that is for grades 1 through 5 in each of the elementary schools for the phys ed program. It actually records, just like a Fitbit, the number of steps that a student is taking in phys ed class. So it gives the ability for the student to kind of monitor their own activity, reach to new heights, as well as the phys ed teachers being able to monitor as well and create lessons that enlist our students to do more activity. Where Everyone Belongs is a transition program that we supported for the Marshall Simons Middle School. It's meant to, the program was seeded as a Train the Trainer program, so we're training 2 teachers and several students on the program, and then they will carry that through year after year and build on it. It's meant to help grade 6 students transition successfully into Marshall Simons, but it also affords the opportunity for grade 8 students to take leadership and participate in the program as mentors. So the program has proven across the nation to provide an increase in student involvement, school spirit, and overall academic achievement, while also decreasing bullying, fighting, and the use of drug and alcohol and tobacco. So we're excited about that program and the fact that it has such longevity to it. The Be Smart program is a program that's in existence today in the high school, and we often have provided funding for additional programs that they introduce each year because of the extent of their program and they reach out to students. This year they brought David Flood to BHS, and David is a speaker that has an amazing energy and own personal experience that he brings to the table, and his message is about being kind. I actually attended that particular presentation, and I have to say it was probably one of the best speakers we've had at the high school, given my experience with my own children and with the VEF of many of the presentations we've seen. He was entertaining, engaging, and his message was very well received from the students and teachers alike. Well, funding all of these programs takes a bit of work. So we are often around town soliciting for help. We run an annual membership campaign. We have a Star Award program that is very successful, particularly at the holiday time or end of year school time, where teachers are recognized, our students are recognized for their hard work through the year. We have our spring and fall raffles, which were very successful this year. We call upon area businesses like restaurants and other facilities to participate in our raffle by donating gifts of up to $1,000 or events up to $1,000. And we are able to raffle that off very successfully and gain more funding for the programs. Trivia is also one of our cornerstone events and very well attended by the school committee itself. It's a night of friendly competition, lots of fun, some camaraderie, and lots of good prizes. And there's always a few costumes that entertain everyone. And then our cornerstone event is the road race. This year, our race was held in May. The designs on our shirts are always solicited from the graphic design classroom here at the high school. So they participate and vote on what they like to have. And then we work with them to make it transferable to a t-shirt. So we've always participated in that with the high school, and it's always been a great way for us to incorporate what we are funding and what we're supporting. And the kids get a big kick out of seeing their logos on the shirts. So our road race was very successful this year. We had just about 400 participants, and we hope that that number grows over time. And we do attract all ages and abilities, which is also very fun. It's fun to see, you know, kids start the half mile and then return the next year or two to run the 5K. So that's always great. And we had really great participation from our sponsors this year, being on site with, you know, free giveaways, free food, lots of activities, moon bounce for the kids. We have a radio station for come in with music. So it's definitely a great community event. Our newest program is offered in the fall, where we're offering particular discussions. We call them Education in Action, and it's a way to bring important topics to the community, particularly parents of school-age children. For the last 2 falls, we've had one documentary film view with a panel discussion followed by the film viewing, and that was on the amount of time teenagers or children are in front of screens and how much is enough or too much. And that was a very well attended event, and Dr. Conti and Patrick were in attendance and led our discussion, which was very lively and very important for everyone that attended. Last year, we also partnered with the Sheriff's Department, and several other organizations to bring in additional topics of online presence and the idea of being solicited online and what your children are exposed to and what to be aware of and how to prevent that from happening. And that was also very well attended. So we'll continue that series, Education in Action, in the fall, and our topic is being discussed with the middle school today. It gives us an opportunity also to partner with the middle school PTO, which opens the school to us, and the idea of reaching out to the parents. A lot of our funding actually is from donations from our annual sponsorship campaign, but most of our funding really comes from the heart and soul of the businesses that are in Burlington. And we're very lucky to have that part of Burlington grow over the years to be able to ask for that support. We also have the added benefit of being members of the Burlington Area Chamber of Commerce, which helps connect and link nonprofits to the businesses in Burlington. But our overall participation or success in the community definitely is with the help of our volunteers and our board members. So we're very happy to be able to attract new volunteers and new members. Tonight, Allison McGrain is with me, who was attracted to the organization, and I'll let her speak for herself, and now is going to be helping us with school liaison activities at each of the schools. So that, you know, we have parents that are with school-age children that are already involved in the schools, helping us bridge that gap and you know, be able to deliver our message. Allison, go ahead, say hello.
Hello, and thank you for having me tonight, and thank you, Paula, for having me, you know, become part of the BEF. But I chose to become a member because I wanted to find a way to give back to the schools that my children are a part of. I just had one graduate from Fox Hill, about to approach middle school, and I have another one that's going into the 3rd grade in Fox Hill. So I really like a lot of the programs. You know, I've always participated in the runs and the trivia nights, and you know, my daughter came home from the talk at the police, and you know, it was very powerful, and the message really hit home. So this is just something that I felt I'd like to give back to the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Allison. And we do have quite a few other openings that would help us be able to bring our message wider, and also help us to fulfill our sponsorship commitments. So thank you all for having us.
Who should people reach out to if they are interested in getting involved?
We ask everyone to use our email account, the info@burlingtonedfoundation.org. So right from our website,
Great.
you can contact us.
Comments? Mr.
I
Nelson?
brought you all a T-shirt.
Oh.
It's the best advertisement.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's plenty of sizes.
Oh.
And TD actually is our race bag sponsor, so they're here too.
I just want to take a minute to, again, Madam Chair,
Yes.
with your permission, just again, stress again, sometimes we hear about this so frequently that it just becomes the norm and the expectation. And I just want to just continue to point out to this committee that groups like the Burlington Education Foundation don't exist everywhere. And this is, it takes just an incredible amount of work, parent organization, dedication. And again, the business community through the chamber and through the BEF really are committed to being good neighbors, good community members, and do invest a lot in schools. And they do anyway for our operational budget, but what makes the foundation, I think, just so powerful is that teachers can have an idea and not have to wait a full fiscal year, or not feel like, oh, I have to go through all the bureaucracy, or who do I have to talk to. They can sort of have a direct conversation, and it's rolling applications, so it really, when they're passionate about a topic, there's a avenue for them to pursue that topic right away. And again, I just want to remind everyone that doesn't exist everywhere, and I don't want you to ever think that we take your support for granted, or we don't recognize how much work goes into in behind the scenes organizing all of the events. So again, sincerely, thank you very much. And I would really encourage any parent who's interested or new to the community. It's also a great group of parents to get to know, and you have kids. I'm sure there are kids represented across all the schools, and it would be, I think, a great group to learn about the community as well. So again, thank you. I just wanted to stress that.
Yes, well, while people are picking out their T-shirts, I also want to thank you for all of the work and all of the people behind you. I know, Paula, you've been doing this for many, many years, and I just admire all of you because, I mean, you just listed all these events you do for the fundraising. You have people also looking through the grants and deciding which grants you're going to fund, and you know, having new people join is so important because these kind of organizations don't sort of happen on their own. They need people to contribute all of the time and energy, and we are certainly very, very appreciative, and all of our students are benefiting from this. So I don't think we can thank you enough. But I want to give other people a chance for other comments. Mr. Nelson?
Just a real quick, Eric pretty much touched on what I was going to say. We are lucky here in Burlington to have the BEF. It's a wonderful organization. You folks devote countless hours of your own time to make it work and make it successful. You know, you run fundraisers, and it's not easy to raise money these days because there's so much competition out there. So you're all talented, and Paula, you've been doing this a long time, and I always look forward to seeing you come before us and tell us about the grants and the fundraising activities, and just keep up the good work. And thanks to you and everyone in your organization. We're lucky to have you.
Thank you. The trivia night is always lots of fun.
It's
And-
always good for a laugh, right?
Well, we always know who's going to win, don't we?
I don't know, we've had a few surprises. But thank you again. It's worthwhile to be able to present and to be recognized for all the good that's being done. There's a lot of people behind us, so I appreciate being the face of the BCAT, but certainly there's quite a strong hold behind me. So thank you.
Mr. Murphy?
I
did
just
you-
want to say thank you too, and say hello to the muscle behind the brains of the organization. Apparently you couldn't make it
I
tonight.
will deliver that message. Thank you all.
Yes.
And Mrs. Russo?
I just want to say thank you, and I love the wide range of activities and fundraisers. The 5K is a great day, and the trivia night's a wonderful night, and then the BEF Star Awards is just a wonderful way to recognize the teachers. So just the thoughtfulness of all the different ways in which you raise the money also is just wonderful, and provides events for the community to take part in too, no matter what you do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for all your work and for your time tonight. And hopefully more new people will hear about it and help support this great organization. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank
Okay.
you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll move on to communication. Dr. Conti, you wanna, or?
So, again, on your desks or by your desks, we put together the schedule for school committee meetings for next year. And I just wanted to suggest one revision, and that is moving the October 8th meeting to October 15th to reflect the start of the a religious holiday. So again, here are the dates. They primarily reflect the schedules that we've had in the past. Obviously, if we get to budget season, and we'll come up with a separate budget calendar. If we need additional dates at that time, we can suggest them at that time. But it should be fairly straightforward going from there. So without, do we need a vote, Sharon, or is this just a communication? So for your planning purposes, your calendar for next year?
Any comments? All
Nope,
set?
looks good.
Okay, thank you. And summer project summary.
Madam Chairman, turn it over to Bob.
Again, thank you all. Before I get into the summer, if I could just give a thank you to the custodians, clerical, and cafeteria people for a wonderful year that we had. A lot of great communication, a lot of great work. I know the custodians have a busy summer coming up, but I just wanted to thank them for the year that we just finished, so thanks for that. I also wanted to just give a quick thank you to this board and town meeting for supporting the seasonal summer employees. I think it would have been really tough for us without them this year, so again, just want to thank you for that. As for projects, we have a big list. We had 17 warrant articles. There's really only 3 that we're going to try to hold off, so that means, like always, we're going to have a busy, busy summer. But what's good is that this year we have a lot of articles that are not just maintenance and building related. For example, CS for All is going to be at the middle school and the high school. Walkie-talkies working with the police department, the BHS computer lab, cafeteria tables at the middle school, and Project Adventure. So all of these conversations are underway. All the quotes are in hand. We're literally just narrowing down all the nitty-gritty details and getting ready for next Monday when it's July 1, so we can get a lot of these purchase orders going. One thing that does need to be noted, which is not our project per se, but does affect our building a little bit, is DPW is going to be paving the lower section of the middle school. So from the basketball courts down, not the entranceway that goes up to the gym, but from that little island right there, all the way down to Locust Street. I know we briefly talked to you about it last meeting, but this is just to confirm that it is going to be happening roughly the week after 4th of July. So around the 12th is when they're projecting to start. They'll be blocking off the Locust Street entrance and blocking off right after the gym entrance at the middle school, but the rest of the building will still be in full use. We did have a discussion briefly, and at this time, we will not be adding the sidewalk to that conversation. So there will be a sidewalk in front of the football field, but there will not be a sidewalk extension from Locust Street in. It's just not part of the original plans, and there's not enough time and/or financing to add that in right now in such short time. But again, provisionally, there'll be enough room for us to add it later on. Just time-wise, it's not in the plans. Again, one of the things we are delaying right now, just because of ongoing conversations, is the BHS HVAC. I know tonight we're going to talk a little bit about some future plans with buildings, but we're having meetings right now with numerous contracts for like performance contracting and vendors and so forth, just so we can kind of see where and what program we would like to do for the high school, but that's still something that we're going to continue with. The BHS front parking lot is still in talks right now, again, with engineering changes and so forth. And then, of course, the Pine Glen room renovation, we're gonna hold that off just because the timeline. We don't think we can get it done this summer. So we're gonna look to later on in the year with either a Christmas, I can't say Christmas, sorry, a winter break and/or a February break to look at that project.
Gotcha.
And again, just to clarify, we do need a 4th DSC classroom, but we're a section down because we have a small 5th grade. So instead of 3 sections of grade 5, we'll have 2 sections of grade 5. So we'll be utilizing that classroom for the 4th, but it's going to be a problem that we have next year because the small 5th grade will be, that grade 2 has been sort of traveling up to school, and that's going to be moving on to middle school, so we'll need every classroom space, so we're going to need to create the 4th DSC room and the meeting space. So we just have a year reprieve because we have a smaller 5th grade.
Question, Robert?
Do you have any questions? Yes.
Yeah, Bob, you may have mentioned this, and I didn't hear it. Are we on track to do the air conditioning at the Francis Wyman?
So we just signed a contract right now to bring the engineer on to do those bid specs, the bid designs, and then to go out to bid. So we're looking at about 2 weeks after the 4th of July to actually have bid specs to go out. So yes, I'd say we're on track. It's going to be tough to have it done probably for the first day, but we're going to try hard. We're also at the same exact time doing that with the Francis Wyman fire alarm as well. So we're having the engineer put those processes together as well too, so we can put that out for bid.
Okay,
So.
thank you.
Okay. Other questions or comments on that? And I just wanted to suggest, rather than move to the next item on the list here, Mr. LeBray is here, our consultation consultant, and would it make sense for us to do that item first and then go back to the other topics?
Sure.
People
I'm in favor.
okay with that?
Thank you, Madam
Okay.
Chair.
So, we will move now to 8, new business, the transportation contract approval that we need to look at tonight. And I will pass it back to you, Dr. Conti or Mr. Cuna.
Again, I can hand it to Bob. Rich is going to join us and can get into the specifics. So we open bids today, and we can get into, we have information at your seats.
So again, as Dr. Conti mentioned, we had a bid that was needed to be rebid. So on June 11th, we had a pre-bidders meeting. On June 25th, today, we actually opened documents. This time, we have 2 bids that came in today. This is a sealed bid process. So at 11 o'clock today, we opened up those bids. What you have in front of you right now is the summary of that and the recommendation to move forward with the bid process. It has the regular day, late day, after-school bus, cost per day, and then as you continue to go down, special education costs, early childhood costs, and then you'll see a total at the bottom. The total is the bid amount with all categories added up, comparing the two companies. The last column is the difference between the two companies. And again, further on in this letter, this is a recommendation provided by Rich LeBrie. Again, this is just an example of his opinion to the committee. Now, obviously, the committee has the opportunity to have some questions and conversations with myself and Rich. I don't know if Rich has something else he'd like to add to that, or if the committee would like to ask a question.
I think the letter of recommendation speaks for itself. I'm happy to answer questions with regard to the process or the results.
Yes, Mr.
I just would add that the difference between the two bids is approximately $204,000.
Yes, Mr. Murphy.
Couple of questions and a comment, I guess. Rich, what's our, and I'm just not familiar with the requirements for this board with respect to the public bidding law. Do we have flexibility? Is it a cut and dry situation? And frankly, there were a couple things that happened here that concerned me, and I just want to know exactly what latitude, if any, we have before I decide what I'm going to do here this evening.
In essence, Chapter 30B, which is the procurement law for Massachusetts, requires you to award to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder.
Okay.
Given those two qualifications, there's not a lot of latitude with regard to
The lowest responsive and responsible bidder, in whose opinion?
actually, in your opinion. I can make a recommendation with regard to defining those as the specifications define them.
Okay.
Basically, a responsive bidder is a bidder who met all of the specifications in the
Right,
bid.
in the bid, yep.
And a responsible bidder is a person or a company that has the capability of doing the work.
And is that a little bit more subjective test than the first one?
Yes.
I'll tell you what, one thing, putting aside the whole rebidding thing, which is a different issue, I see in here that, and granted, there weren't a lot of them, but there were some negative references by the low bidder. In my experience with the bidder that came in second place, we've had very good relationship and service with that company for a number of years. Low bid is low bid. Obviously, everybody wants to save money. It's taxpayers' money, and I understand that. But when I see that he had, that this company had some sort of a problem, and I'm just reading from the narrative here that they weren't terminated from their contract, but they chose not to, whatever community it was, chose not to renew it afterwards. That gives me some cause for concern. And I guess my question to you, to the degree that you know or that you can answer it, is where does my latitude come into play, and is there a concrete test, or is it just strictly personal subjective feelings?
I guess it would be my subjective opinion, having done my due diligence with regard to the research. And when we looked at both the references that were provided, and I called references that were not provided. And the negative reference is about 3 years old. And all of the current school districts that have the low bidder were all very good.
Okay.
And I balanced the 6 or 7 that I have that were very positive against the negative, which was 3 or 4 years, I think 3 years old, combined with review of comments, and I think it was Facebook that we looked at online, where most of the comments were 5-star comments, with several negative comments. Several of the negative comments revolved around they're not moving a bus stop to satisfy a particular parent. They were not accident-related, a couple with regard to the driver using profanity or things like that. But by far, most of the comments were highly positive. I looked at Better Business Bureau website and found that they were A+ in terms of Better Business Bureau. I've had occasion, 2 other occasions, to do due diligence on the same company in other communities, and found one that they were both responsive and responsible there. And secondly, that I called those school districts, and their performance has been very good to excellent there. And that was Dracut, which was relatively close by. So in my opinion, the positiveness of what I found outweighed the negative comment. Now, that's my opinion. You may have a different opinion, and it's certainly the prerogative of this board to weigh those things differently than I would. I make a recommendation, and it is your choice whether to accept the recommendation, modify it, or reject it.
One other question to follow up on that then, I guess. Were it to be the vote of this board to reject your recommendation and go with the other bidder, what are the potential repercussions of that?
I would expect a challenge at the Inspector General's office. I would think that you would need sufficient reason to reject the low bid. If you choose to think or say that or weigh the negative to outweigh the positive references, that is certainly your choice to be able to do that. But I do think you would be at risk in the IG's office.
And just kind of an overlying comment about the unfairness of the whole thing, frankly, and I don't know how that factors into the criteria that you just mentioned that we're supposed to be looking at, but the idea that we have a bidding process where 2 people bid and one person has a pretty damn good idea what the other person's going to be bidding, that just stinks. And yeah, I'm still wrestling with that one. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Are you familiar with the fact that, obviously you are, with the fact that we had to rebid this?
Yes.
And can you explain to us the reason why we had to rebid it?
The bid was not advertised in combis, and the IG took the opinion that it was a requirement and issued a directive to the school district to rebid.
So I understand that you work with a lot of communities.
I do.
Do all the communities that you work with advertise in that particular, whatever it is?
Combis?
Yes.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I don't think they all have.
So.
There were varying opinions with regard to the Secretary of State and the Inspector General's office over transportation contract advertising over time.
Over time, there were various opinions.
Mm-hmm.
So my understanding is that if a bid is over a certain amount of money, it goes in one periodical. And if it's over a higher amount, it goes in the other. Is that correct?
That was our understanding and the understanding of other school districts also.
And so we put it in the one that was the higher amount because that was the correct option of the 2.
Correct.
And because we didn't advertise it in both, the IG's office decided that we needed to rebid it.
That was correct.
Okay.
In addition, we advertised in public newspaper, and we sent the bid out to, I think it was 30 or 33 different companies in an attempt to solicit competition for this contract.
What?
did the winning bidder here get, you said you sent the bid to all of the 32 different companies?
Correct.
Did it go to the winning bidder here, do you remember?
Yes, they participated the first time. They came to the bidders meeting, and they chose not to bid the first time.
Okay, so all of the other communities that you work with that have not advertised in that particular publication, have they been required to rebid?
No,
No, but we were required to rebid.
yes,
Did you see the letter from the IG's office?
yes, I did.
Did you find it as odd as I found it, in that it seemed very pointed, that it seems to me, and I am making my own observation, it seems to me that someone in the community who was not happy with the prior bid process complained to the IG's office. And it also seems to me that there must be a fairly strong connection between whoever this is and the IG's office, or someone in that office. Because the letter that we got said, there are people in town hall that can help you do this bid properly. And I don't really think that the IG makes a habit of knowing what every town hall has for expertise. So I have to say that there's something about this whole thing that, in my opinion, doesn't smell right, doesn't pass the test. So then what happened is, since A&F had been the only bidder, it was obvious what they were going to bid, or close to what they were going to bid, needed to bid, had to bid in order to make it work. And someone who had chosen not to bid the first time came in the second time after finding out what A&F had bid and undercut them. Now, I don't know a whole lot about the law, but I know a whole lot about human relations, and there's something wrong with that picture. I also notice in here, and I don't understand it, that both companies are owned by the same individual.
The individual who is the low bidder owns a second company. The two low bidders are not the same company. The two bidders are not the same company.
Trombley and
NRT and Trombley are owned by the same person.
Okay, and so only one of those two bid.
One of those two bid, correct.
Okay, so, you know, I understand that you made a recommendation. I'm not sure exactly why you recommended what you recommended. I do know that you helped us through the bid process the first time, and yet we were forced to rebid it. And then after A&F's number was known by the entire world, another company came in and bid a lower number.
Mhm.
So I just don't feel right about this. And having said all that, I will move on.
I would just address one of your
Sure.
points. Typically, the IG does not tell you who filed the complaint. But it would, you were correct, it would have taken a complaint in the IG's office for them to even look at this at all.
Of course it would, and it was obviously someone who knows the inner workings of our own town hall, or it would not have said in the letter that there are two people at town hall that could help you with the bidding process. So somebody is giving us a hard time, and in doing so, they have created what I consider to be a huge mess with this bus contract.
Well, Madam Chair, I have a potential conflict of interest. So I'm not allowed under the conflict of interest statute to opine on this subject. So unfortunately, I am going to have to abstain from the conversation
Okay.
right now. So thank you.
Yes, Mrs. Russo.
Try and figure out where to start here. First,
Thanks.
I'm wondering, can we just do this every time? so we can open bids and then go back and get a lower bid the second time?
It's,
I mean, in the grand scheme, we got 200,000 off the bill. So, I mean, I'm sure the town's meeting people and Ways and Means are very excited for that. But at the same point, I don't think that's the way we should be doing things. With regard to having you before us, I had been approached by a number of people saying that we could have this work done through Town Hall. The past 2 years have been very difficult for Burlington. It's been a huge learning curve for the school committee. When we were given the opportunity to pay $5,000 to have you come with your expertise, specifically in busing, and I think it was very clear the past 2 times you were here, through all the emails with Mr. Eiler and the Ways and Means, that you have a specific expertise in this area with the wages, with different equipment on the buses. And this, to me, is extremely important. For the past 8 years I've been on the board, we've done 1 contract and an extension of 2, and it was more of a 10-minute conversation because our finance director had been doing this. This time, based on what we've gone through the past 2 years, it was very important to me to have someone out there who knew specifically buses, from the oil to the tires to the workers to the management, to speaking directly with our Ways and Means on the real intricacies of busing. Also the expertise of you saying, I've opened 30 bids in the past 20, in the past 2 years, that we talked about at town meeting when people said, wait, this bid is much higher, but at the same point, it's still of the lowest in the community, bottom third, I believe it was, or the third lowest that you've opened. And for us, me particularly, as a school committee member, after the past few years, trying to get that transparency, trying to understand more of the finance and be clear about it, and where the town was so gracious enough to pull it out of our budget and let us do our budget and then go through this process, it was important to have you here. And I want to thank you for all your time. You know, this seems like an issue where, you know, you've walked into an area where we've had 2 years of financial issues, and I feel that you just got caught, because it's been fine in other communities, but yet here it's not. And that's just a reflection of how people feel. But for me personally, having you and going through this process with you has been excellent. Maybe next time, and don't take this personally, we would feel more comfortable going through with the expertise we have in Town Hall, because we have learned so much and spent so much time. And I think Mr. Eiler, if he was still around in a couple years, would maybe have that comfort of level too. But for this time period, for this go-around, after not having any of that education, it was important to do it this way. So I want to apologize for the environment, let's just say, that you have been caught in. I feel extremely disheartened over the new award. I spoke to you either in October or December, I forget which of the 2 meetings, that this company transports their first school 10 minutes early, sits there with the kids on the buses, not just in the community I work in, but at least 3 other communities. For 10 minutes in the dark, they sit there. You can't idle those buses, state law. So it's 20 degrees out, 6:45 in the morning, they're sitting on the bus. That's not acceptable. The other thing is, where I work, it's been a half hour. Those kids are still waiting for their buses in the cafeteria. That's not the case. We've worked very hard over the past couple of years to make sure every student is home within half an hour of that transportation. Half an hour from that bell, they're home. They're not still in the caf waiting for their. So my issue is these people might say this bus company has a good record. They're very workable, but their level of standard and the expectation from the parents and the school committee in those towns might be very different than what it is here in Burlington. So I will not be having our students sit on that bus for 10 minutes in the cold waiting to get into the school because they're afraid they might run into traffic. Burlington's been able to do it. A&F has been able to do it for the past 8 years without a problem. And we get those kids home within half an hour for whatever reason they need to be home. So I understand that this company has a good record with other communities, but at the same point, I don't know if those other communities have the same level of expectation that we do here. So I'm kind of grappling with it, but the biggest thing I want to say to you is thank you for all your time. Thank you for the education, because I've learned so much about busing than I had in the past.
And quite frankly, and I thank you for your comments, but quite frankly, I share your concern. And you'll notice that in addition to the recommendation with regard to award, I've recommended that you require a 100% performance bond the first year. And I would recommend that with any new company coming into a school district to hold their feet to the fire for the performance level that you require.
Okay. So I have a couple of questions. I have the same concerns that have been expressed. One question is, when we say it's, the Tremblay bid is $204,000 less than the A&F bid, is that per year?
Per year, correct.
And I know we spent a lot of time talking about what exact requirements went into the contract. So is Tremblay saying they're going to do all the seatbelts and the things that we asked for?
Yes.
And do they have the capacity to do that? Where are they going to get all these buses from, for example?
They have the buses.
Yeah.
And presumably, they have the drivers.
Okay.
They will offer, according to their comment at the bid opening, they will offer employment to all of the current drivers in the community, hopefully to hire them. And if not, they have sufficient drivers for this contract.
Okay, that is another concern of mine. I know we've been very, we have a lot of really wonderful bus drivers who've been doing this in Burlington, know the kids. That's a real valuable thing as well.
We recognize that, and we made it a specification that they were required, if there was a subsequent contractor, they were required to offer employment to all of the current drivers who met their qualifications.
Oh, so that is part of what they bid on?
It is.
They agreed, that is a commitment?
It is correct.
Okay. And what, do you have a question on that?
So do they steal the other bus drivers?
I'm sorry?
I'm confused. So do they take the other bus drivers?
They don't take them, they offer employment to them.
Okay, so the other company doesn't, like, have contracts with their bus driver?
They may or may not, but I would presume that their contracts expire at the end of the school year.
Oh, okay, all right, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That
no.
just seemed odd.
No, it's,
We just wanted to make sure that, that the current drivers were not left stranded
yes.
or unemployed, because we recognize that many of them, if not most of them, are members of your community.
Yes.
And we want to make sure that they have an opportunity for employment.
And so you're saying that this bid that you're recommending includes that offer of employment to those, to our current bus drivers?
It's a requirement in the specifications and will subsequently be a requirement in the contract.
Okay. Tell me more about what a 100% performance bond would do, especially in terms of the issues that Mrs. Russo just brought up around how long kids sit on buses and how long it takes them to get home and what temperature it is and things.
Basically, the performance bond guarantees the performance that's required in the bid specifications, which means maintaining the schedule according to your bell schedules. What that means primarily is that the buses aren't going to run late and get to your schools late. Drivers have the requirements for CDL, drug and alcohol testing, among other things. That the age and quality of the buses are such that they meet your expectations. There's not breakdowns, there's not constant breakdowns, things of that nature. And just, the whole litany of specifications. But
Those have been written, those were written down in the bids.
They're all written in the bid, and by virtue of his bid, and there were no qualifications in his bid, he did not qualify his bid by anything that was in the specification. He's agreed to all of that.
And is it listed in there that kids shouldn't sit on the bus for 10 minutes?
No.
And
No.
I mean, part of my concern, and I've only, this is only my 5th year on the committee, but, so I've not been through a contract before, but I heard year after year that the A&F bus company has been very responsive, and we called the owner, and he tells, he takes care of stuff for us, and that we've been very satisfied with that performance. Whereas I'm concerned about whether we would get the same quality. I mean, $200,000 is quite tempting for the town of Burlington, and I know people are concerned. It's a lot of money, this contract, regardless of whether it's the lower or the higher number. Did you have something you want?
One of the comments that I received from several of the other school districts with regard to the references is that the owner is very accessible by cell phone, and when contacted, any problems or issues are taken care of immediately.
So,
And the owner did give Bob and I his cell phone number this morning, and to assure us that he was available by cell phone, basically 24/7.
okay. I mean, I do feel like our hands are tied. I feel like we were told by the IG's office unfairly that we had to rebid it because other towns have done the same bidding process, or whatever it's called, the procurement, whatever the law is. And yet, we've been, we were required to do something that other districts are not, but I don't, as far as I understand, we don't have any recourse for the Inspector General's office. And I'm really disappointed. I have the same concerns about fairness, that the second bidder knew generally what the first bidder was going to do. I know we've consulted all along with our legal counsel, and that they feel that our hands are tied, and I feel really stuck and very frustrated. Mr.
And-
Murphy. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, for what it's worth, we did speak with your legal counsel before I drafted
Yeah.
the recommendation.
Yeah, thank you.
Just a couple
Yes.
follow-ups if I could, Madam Chair. Do you know how many other towns Trombley handles? How many other school districts?
I don't know all of them, but I think I contacted 7 today.
That he had the current contract for?
Correct. Yeah, there were 3 that he listed as references because he was required in the specification to list 3 references, and then we contacted 4 others that I know of that use him, that he did not list.
In addition to what some of the observations that Kristen made, that also concerns me. I believe, at the very least, that creates a situation where there are going to be divided loyalties and whose calls is he answering. And again, we've had such good service with A&F over the years, and I would agree with both what Kristen and Martha said. I don't think we're going to get the same from this company. I'm not saying that they might not fall below the measuring stick that I suppose we're supposed to use, but in my opinion, there's no way we're going to get anywhere near the service from this company that we've been getting. On the 100% performance bond, you listed the things that they would be required to do. What's the recourse if they don't? Do they pay us money back out of their bond? Do we deduct it from their fee? How's that work?
In theory, if you were to terminate the contract for cause, or the problems were severe enough that you call the bonding company, in essence, if it's a 100% bond, you're going to be returned prorated the balance of the contract or what you've unpaid.
So it comes into play only if you terminate a contract?
That's correct. Yeah.
And
But what it does from a more I guess, a better standard of looking at it is that when you call in, attempt to call in a bond on a bonding company, they typically force the contractor, they don't want to pay the money to you, obviously, to, like an insurance policy. What they typically do is they force the contractor to perform to the expectation that you have.
Okay.
But what I would suggest to you, and I suggested it to Bob, is that if you have issues and problems with their performance, you need to document it from day one.
Sure.
And build a paper trail.
Okay. Not exactly the mind frame I want to go into in a new contract with a new company is that type of posturing, but I think that's what we have to do. To the superintendent, obviously, people are torn about what we're going to do here. From the administration's perspective, I'll tell you what I'm wrestling with right now, I do not want to vote to grant this to Trombley. But I am somewhat leery of the repercussions of doing that. My concern is that even if we do give it to Trombley, there could be repercussions from A&F because they've had this pulled out from under their rug as well, and I'm sure their business situation has changed over the course of time in reliance on this bid. So I'm sitting here wondering if we're going to be stuck in some sort of a legal battle one way or the other. And if that's the case, I'd rather go into that backing my horse than backing a horse I don't want to back. So I guess to the degree that you can, in maybe conversations that you've had with council, what happens to the school department in school busing in general if this advances by either A&F challenging or Trombley challenging, depending on what happens here? What does that do to our bus service coming into the next school year?
Through the chair, Mr. Murphy, I'm not sure I can answer the question specifically. When I spoke to council, he basically said there needs to be a business reason why the low vendor wasn't chosen. So if it's history, if it's that, again, mostly we just talked about the length of service, and he was saying what he would recommend to the committee is that there be a business reason, a poor recommendation. If there were some documented issues or something like that, where it could be something that the committee could cling to on that, I think is what Darren was commenting on. I don't know if it's not awarded. Again, I guess we could rebid the process again. Rich, I don't know exactly. Again, I'm out of my area of expertise. I need to, we could certainly talk to Darren. He's aware of the situation, and he would want to respond.
Actually, you raise a good point. I mean, I assumed our options here were either to award it to Trombley or award it to A&F, because those are the two bidders. Is rebidding it again a third option?
Would we need a
Well,
reason to reject?
If I could, what I would suggest to you, if you're going to go down that road, is to take advantage of the fact that you have, I think, 90 days to award the bid.
Okay.
Avail yourself of the time, of some of the time. Speak with counsel. I think maybe you might want to do that in an executive session, since it might have a potential for litigation. And decide at that point whether you have a sufficient reason to reject both bids. Going to bid a third time, you can do that. In somewhat of a fairness perspective, everybody's numbers are then on the table.
Exactly.
And on a third bid, I don't think, from a fairness perspective, it might appear to be more fair, even though the process itself is fair because everyone bids against the same specification. So there were no specifications that were tailored to one vendor or another. But the fact that, one vendor's numbers were known on a rebid, yeah, that's tough to swallow from a fairness perspective.
Sure. Bob,
Excuse me, well, go ahead.
Bob, from a soup to nuts, what was the time frame from when we got that letter to rebid to sitting here tonight? What,
Just shy of 3 weeks.
3 weeks?
Yeah, so,
So,
but we have a holiday in between.
right, so maybe 4 weeks or 5 weeks. From a timing perspective, from the school department standpoint, if we elect to hold off on taking an action this evening, as Rich says, apparently we have 90 days, to just give this some more thought and do a little bit more research, is there a problem from the school department standpoint if we vote this tonight versus we voted a month from now? Or even further, if we opt to rebid it, and now we have to wait for a 3 or 4 week timeframe, what does that do?
Well, we do transport during the summer, but it is special ed transportation. Rich, please correct me again, I'm out of my area. We don't have to bid special ed, is that correct?
If you use the 30B process for both regular and special education, everything falls under the 30B process. If the committee were to reject all bids, then we're basically starting over. You can pull special ed out of the bid and only bid for regular transportation, which you're legally required to. You can use a whole new, different strategy or process to negotiate for special ed. Typically, you might want to use an RFP process, or you might want to negotiate, or in your case, since you belong to a collaborative, you don't have to bid to utilize your collaborative. You could just have your collaborative do your summer transportation, which again would give you the time to rebid if you wanted to do that. The rebid process on a third rebid would take about 4 weeks, depending on the timing. The reason being is that goods and services only publicizes once a week. You have to meet a Wednesday deadline to get something in goods and services the following Monday. Have to advertise in a newspaper, combis, and then you have to, you cannot open a bid within a minimum of a 10-day period between the time that you advertise and the time that you open. You have to have a bidders meeting, typically you have a bidders meeting in between. So that process can stretch out to, to at least 4 weeks, sometimes 5 weeks, depending on the timing.
So, would we have to formally vote to reject both bids in order to rebid? Or is it possible for this board to move to just go straight to a rebidding process because of discomfort with what do we have to do from a legal standpoint to?
I'm not your attorney. I don't want to give you legal advice.
Understood.
But from my opinion, you would have to reject both bids in order to rebid the process.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I don't think that you can bid a project for which you've already bid.
And to reject both bids, we have to come to the finding that you discussed earlier, that we had concerns about obviously, to me, the logical problem with that vote is that we've already voted to accept
No, we didn't vote,
A and F's bid originally is the exact same bid
but we didn't vote to accept it.
initially. We didn't vote it?
I believe you did on the first.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We awarded
the
it.
committee did an award the
We
first
didn't
time.
award it.
We recognize the bids that were received, yes, but we've not awarded
No,
or
we
issued a
didn't.
contract.
Formally awarded it.
No.
All right. Is the IG the ultimate judge in all this, or does it go beyond, I assume that it can then go on to Superior Court?
Typically, the IG is advisory in nature. They have little, if any, enforcement authority. In the event that we were to ignore the letter that the district received, they would file with the Attorney General's office, who then can prosecute.
I'd like to see if Mr. Eiler has a comment. I think you did earlier. I don't know if you still do, but.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually had a few questions first, and then some comments. Maybe this will help clarify some things, at least for me. So just for comparison, what was A&F's original bid number?
Was it the same as what we have here?
That's what I'm curious.
Yes, they did not change their bid numbers from their original bid. They were the same.
So it was that same 2.3 million, right?
Roughly. It was, actually, the difference was $366 a day to the low bid of $333 per day. And your current cost is $285 per day.
Okay. And then what was the district that gave the negative reference? Is that public knowledge or?
I'd rather not answer in open session, if you don't mind.
Just a note on the performance bond. Looking at the bid spec, it looks like it's $1,200 per 100,000. So for a roughly $2 million contract, that's $24,000 a year. Is that the right analysis on that?
I didn't do the math, but it's
Roughly 20 times the 1,200.
I think it was $4.41 per thousand.
I'm just looking at this bid form 1 that we got in April. And on the second to last page, it's saying performance bond would be $1,200 per 100,000 for each year contract. I assume that's the relevant.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
So if I do the math right, for $2 million, that'd be roughly $24,000 a year. So there's an interesting cost associated with the performance bond, and I'm presuming we don't have a performance bond with A&F right now? So that would be an extra cost that we'd be incurring there, that you're recommending that we would incur because of our potential uncomfortableness.
It's an insurance policy is
Sure.
basically what it is.
Yeah, but we don't feel we need that insurance with A&F for whatever reason. Just so I understand, this summer transportation for, I guess, this summer, wouldn't that be covered under our current contract, which goes until?
Your current contract ends
July 1.
June 30th.
Or June 30th.
Right.
Okay, right, okay. So I don't know, all the details of the state bidding process. Something I noted that happens with federal contracts, so I'm imagining this might be possible with state contracts, is the government receives a bunch of bids, and then regardless of who won or who didn't, or who had the lowest bid and who didn't, they can put out a request for best and final offers, which is really just a sneaky way of saying, can you guys lower your bids a little more, we want to save some money. But the point is, in the federal process, I know that is absolutely something that can be done, where effectively say, give us your best and final offer, we're giving you all another shot to lower your bid and potentially win. Is that a mechanism that's available in the state bidding process?
30B does not allow that. What 30B does allow is negotiation, but only with the low bidder, and you can only negotiate down.
Sure. I like that part. Okay. I agree with a lot of the other comments that.
If I could,
Sure.
the other part of 30B does allow you to increase a contract, but again, only with your low bidder, and up to 25% of the value of the contract.
So I do agree with some of the other comments that the process is a little fishy, certainly at best. know, I guess what I would suggest, it sure seems like when I'm out getting contractors for my house or something, you know, the negative reviews carry a lot of weight because I know people are very hesitant to give those. And from what I've seen about governments, they're extremely hesitant to ever not renew a contract or award a contract to a low bidder. And it seems to me that if a town thought this company did such a bad job that they wouldn't go with them even with the low bid, and that was substantiated by the IG, that carries a lot of weight for me, that something must have been really bad for that to occur. I'm not surprised they didn't terminate the contract because that's virtually impossible to do without going to court the rest of your life, and I'm sure they just decided it wasn't worth the trouble. But the fact that they would say, we don't care that you're lower and we're not giving you your contract, personally, that is the most interesting data point here. And we can easily spend $200,000 worth of time and money dealing with the headaches that can come from a company that at least significantly underperformed in one district. I like saving $200,000 as much as the next guy, no doubt about it. But it seems to me that if we can't do the best and final offer approach, that doing a rebid seems, now that there are in fact two bidders, it seems unlikely if we were to rebid that they would raise their bids at this point because they know there is competition. Obviously, that wouldn't have been so smart with only one bidder. Strikes me that, you know, taking the 4 months to give it another shot and potentially close the gap, even if the gap isn't completely closed, it makes it that much easier to make the argument that this negative review is not worth whatever the delta is now or whatever it would be with a rebid. And I think that gives you a clear business case. It's a very clear business case. If someone has a history of significantly underperforming, that's a very supportable argument to make. So that would be the path that makes sense to me.
Mrs. Monaco?
I don't know about rebidding it. It kind of seems like, you know, you're playing the game until you win, you know. I think what we need to do is look ourselves into the history, the things that Kristen mentioned, and the history, and see if we really have reason to object. I personally, I think that the fact that A&F's bid was known alone should be a business reason for saying there's something wrong with this picture. I think we do need to talk to our legal counsel. We need to find out what our options are. I certainly am not in any frame of mind to approve award a bid to the low bid tonight. That's not going to happen with my vote. But in order to do the right thing and be fair, I think we, as a committee, need to look more carefully at the references and what's really happening, and see if we can get some clarification on the fact that that company did not bid the first time, but did bid the second time when they knew what the other guy had already bid. So I just think we need to take some time on this.
Could I, just one more question, Madam Chair? Just to clarify, you said we have 90 days to
Yeah.
award this?
I was in error. It's 60 days
60 days.
in this specification.
I certainly don't want to take that long, but
No.
is this something, Dr. Conti, that could wait till our next meeting and while we do a little investigating or research or thinking about it or whatever?
I think for the start of school, yes. I think, again, I'm going to ask if that would give us potentially the 4 weeks, that's the middle of July, basically. I honestly would have to look or work with Bob to figure something out for July 8th.
Okay, I mean, sitting here myself, the rebid idea sounds tempting because then I think it's fair. But as a practical matter, if to go to that step, we have to find that we don't feel either of the current bids are reasonable or don't meet the criteria that Rich set out earlier. Frankly, I was satisfied with the A&F bid when we got it a month ago, and I think it's fair now when I know the company and I don't have the same concerns with this company that I do with the other company.
Right.
So I'm not sure rejecting both bids is necessarily, in my mind, not to mention the additional time that's then involved in rebidding. To me, the question is whether I have enough grounds through my subjective analysis of the record of Trombley to reject their bid. And then if I've rejected that bid, then I think we move on to the next qualified bid, which is A&F. I'm just not sure, sitting here tonight, having just got this as we came in this afternoon and not really knowing a lot about what we have to do, what the repercussions are. We've had a little discussion here. I'd like to have council involved a little bit. I would like, if we could kick this over to our next meeting, just to, not necessarily, and maybe the will of the committee is to rebid it, in which case that's fine, but I would just like to get more information both about what we can do, what the repercussions are to take in whichever step we take, and I think we need some input from council on that.
I would also add my 2 cents worth, if you don't mind. We might want to have a conversation with the IG's office also with regard to what the options are.
To the degree that they're willing to do that, I'd be happy
They may not,
Yeah.
but I think it's worth a phone call to lay out the facts with regard to the value of a negative as compared to several positive references, and your concern with the quality of service that you have received versus the quality of services that you may or may not receive,
Right.
And your comfort level.
I'm happy to do that if they're willing to talk to us, or council, our attorney can talk to them. I mean, we also have the holiday week in the interim here, which is going to gum things up potentially a little bit. When do we meet again in July?
23rd.
What is it, 23rd?
23rd.
23rd.
So,
So,
that's,
I'd like to ask if anyone has other suggestions about where we how to go forward from here. Yes.
If I could.
Yeah.
I would suggest to you that you not wait till the 23rd, that you somehow expedite your deliberations. The reason being is that both of these contractors will need to hire drivers. I know that NRT already has buses. I'm not sure that A&F already has buses to, for this contract. And if you wait till the 23rd of July and then wait another 4 weeks to go through a bidding process, if that is your desire, we're looking at opening bids just shortly before school. I want to position you so that you have service for the start of school and have a smooth opening.
I'd also like to ask Dr. Conti how disruptive each of these things that have been thrown out. I mean, are there some that are just too disruptive? I mean, our hands are kind of tied, and we've really been put in a position by somebody and by the Inspector General's office to be in this late in the season, and it's obviously, no matter what we do, it's going to be disruptive. But I want to just hear your input, Dr. Conti, about do you have an idea? You may not right this minute. What would be just too disruptive for the school and for the students and for us moving ahead with our programs this summer and next fall?
Again, I have a hard time considering both companies as an outsider because we have a relationship with one. So do I think A&F could be ready to go very shortly. I'd say, of course, because they've been doing the work, they know the routes. Again, I think that would be I'm not worried about that. I just don't know how the conversations would go with the procurement office or everything else. I have some ideas about the July 8th summer school. I think special ed gives us some flexibility because we don't have to bid it. So I'm saying I think we might be able to solve the July 8th problem, which is the one that is most immediate to me. Whether a new bus company could turn around routes and services and everything else as quickly, I can't speak to that. So, and whether the disruption of a new company anyway is, if that's going to cause some consternation in the fall with new drivers and everything else, might be the case as well. So. I just want to make sure we're probably, Mr. Murphy, on either side of this going to face some conversations. I think, do we have to have a reason to reject the bids? I just want to make sure I'm clear on that.
Yes, you do.
So we have to have a reason to reject the bids, and that reason might be questioned from the outset. If that reason is questioned from the outset, can we rebid, or we have to wait till that question is resolved until we rebid? Because if that's the case, even if it were expedited, then we're going to be without a bidder come the fall. Is there any sort of stay put where we can sort of keep what we have until we resolve all these other legal questions?
The contract with your current contractor ends on June 30th, period.
So I guess that would be my question is
the practical.
even the rejecting of the bids may require some lead time to resolve. Is that correct?
I would think. I would suggest to you that you speak with counsel before you take any action tonight, even rejecting the bid, given the comfort or uncomfort level that the committee obviously has. I certainly would feel more comfortable if you spoke with counsel, and I'm happy to meet with the committee and counsel for whatever value my input is worth, and I would be happy to be party to the discussion with the IG's office. And it might make sense to ask for an appointment with the IG and sit down. They're oftentimes very reasonable in dealing with municipalities in particular. Not always so reasonable dealing with consultants, but certainly they are with municipalities because their job is to protect the public interest.
I'd like to just see at this point if there's someone in the audience or something they would like to, if they came for this reason and wanted to speak tonight. And then we can continue. Is that okay?
That's
Our
fine.
discussion of what we're going to do now. Yes, please come forward and give us your name.
Hi, I'm Bob Bent, I'm the president of A&M Company.
Hi, Mr. Bent.
Hi, how are you? I'd just like to say a little bit on my side about, and I appreciate all of your kind words about my company and our service and my bus drivers that have done, I think, a wonderful job for the town, and we hope to somehow continue to do that with you. The thing is we're rejecting the fact that the IG's office lets some contracts go through without questioning the reason that they told you that you had to rebid the contract. There's at least a half a dozen contracts that have been, school bus contracts, that have been awarded, bid and awarded this year that weren't in combis, just like yours wasn't. And yet, these all go through, and the school committee got to, do the thing. Award the bids and enter into a contract. But this one, we're filing a bid protest with the IG's office tomorrow, actually, to say the fact that, we should have been awarded the bid the first time through. Second time through, big contractor has 800,000 buses. He loses a contract, he can come in here and or throw a number in here and, not know what he's up against, not know the level of service that you demand and have been used to. And that's what happened at Shawshene Tech, is that we were the contractor for years. He came in, underbid the contract, gave the level of service that he felt was adequate for them, but that wasn't what they were used to. And, that's the reason that they wouldn't accept his bid the second time around, even though he was lower than us. And we're currently back at the Tech, giving them the great service that they're used to and you've come accustomed to. So I just want to say that we are going to fight this, me as a contractor to the IG's office, that I don't feel that they had the right. If they don't, why do it to us and not do it to everybody? You're not doing what you say consistently across the board. So because of that, I think that we should have been awarded the contract initially. And I understand, the problems with trying to rebid and do it again. He's a big contractor. He can go down, he makes money here, he makes money there. It costs me a certain amount of money to give you the service that you're used to and keep a small group of people like I have. I don't have 100 buses. I only have 35 buses. And I have all these people that work for me that are there to help support that, mechanics, so in order to give you the level of service that you're used to, that's what it takes. It costs money to do that. So that's all I got to say. So that's what I'm going to try to do. And I would just say that if you just gave a time to see how this plays out, it might be the quickest way to either see whether we're going to be able to do something, or you'll have to, if you're forced to move forward with the low bid. So.
Okay.
Can-
Yes, Mr. Murphy.
Can we, if the board's willing, Rich makes a good point about waiting until the July 23rd. Maybe we should schedule a meeting either on Tuesday the 8th or at the latest on the 15th. Give Mr. Bent a chance to file whatever he's going to file, and then maybe at that point, council can talk to us if necessary, or maybe talk to the IG to see, what they think about this, because I don't want to do something rash this evening and then have to undo it again somewhere down the road. Anyway, we do have some time to make a decision without poisoning our own well. I think maybe another week or two we can deal with that and then kind of reassess.
Yes, Mrs. Monica.
So Shawshene rejected this same company as the low bidder recently?
3 years ago, like he said. Well, I don't know exactly how it all did, but they opened the bids, he was low bidder, and then he either withdrew his bid or they rejected it, one or the other. I'm not exactly sure how it went down on paper. But they awarded the contract to us.
Yes, Mrs. Russo.
Just want, even though you say it costs money, our bid was still, the third lowest in the state that came through with, so, yes, I just want to point that out, and there are people, I'm sure, at home just yelling at the TV right now because we're not going for that $200,000 savings and then accumulate over 5 years. But busing our kids is one of the largest safety issues we have. We're inviting these buses into our neighborhoods. We are putting thousands of children, 1,500 children higher on these buses in rain and wind and snow, in car accidents on Route 3, this is one of those areas that $1 million is very difficult to equate with the safety and the professionalism and the buses that we are, again, inviting into our neighborhoods, putting on our streets. So for those that can't understand why we're wrestling with this, sit behind this desk and think about making that decision for those children that we are putting on these buses. It's not as easy as just a $200,000 price tag.
So I'd like to request that somebody propose a procedure that we move. It sounds like people are not wanting to vote tonight. Is that a sense of the committee?
I move that we table this until our next meeting, and that we plan our next meeting depending on when we have the information. That it could be an emergency meeting or,
Got to post it, so.
Special.
yeah, we'll have to decide in time to post a meeting, but,
Can I suggest that
Sure.
we aim towards July 9th, which is Tuesday, which is 2 weeks from tonight, knowing that next week is a holiday week and nobody's around, but by then, Mr. Bent will have started his ball rolling. We'll have a chance to talk to Darren. Tuesday's our usual meeting night anyway. I don't know if people are around or not.
that's fine with me. I would just suggest that if we don't have the information that we need at that point, that we might not have the meeting.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, okay.
It'll be for that specific purpose.
So table it until the meeting on the 9th.
Post that.
Yeah, I would like to encourage us to pick that day and assume we'll have enough information by then.
Yeah,
And also, do we need to schedule a time for us to have an executive session with council? And does that need to be scheduled before the 9th as well, then?
we probably don't need that.
Yeah, I mean, I would suggest the superintendent can talk to
Okay.
Darren, and, maybe we could have a executive session prior to the meeting on the 9th if necessary, if he wants to.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just looking for input from him. I'm not necessarily, I don't know if we all have to sit down and have the discussion, as long as he can give us some sort of an outline as to what our obligations are and what our options are.
Okay. Are there other suggestions on that process?
If I may?
Yes.
I am not available on the 9th. Not that you need me, but I certainly can work with council prior to that and provide you with whatever best information I can. But I'm committed to a school board meeting in New York that night.
All right, thank
Do
you.
we feel that that's a problem, or do we want to pick a different day if we feel that Mr. LeBrie should be here?
Personally, I think timing's more important than, I
Okay.
think Rich can certainly
And
communicate with us
we could communicate
offline.
with you
Yeah.
in whatever we need. Is there something else, Dr. Conti or Mr. Cuna, that you feel we would need at this point?
No, I need to work out a contingency for July 8th.
July
So
8th.
we'll do that.
July 9th.
No,
July
July
8th.
for when summer school
Summer
starts.
Oh, but,
So-
and you're gonna be away, aren't you?
It's fine, I'll come back with Molly and we'll figure something out.
Yeah, no, it's okay. We can handle it.
So I'll be,
So let me try to clarify what we've decided tonight. We have a recommendation from the consultant for a low bid, and we have many concerns about the low bid because of fairness issues and other kinds of issues.
And business issues.
And business issues. We are not comfortable voting to award this bid tonight. We're not rejecting the bids, but we're not comfortable accepting it. And we're going to, various people will be communicating with our council, with the IG's office, with anyone else who seems to be useful for us to be able to move forward. And Mr. Bent obviously will proceed in whatever way he feels he needs to. I just want to add that, $200,000 over a 5-year contract is a lot of money, and as Mrs. Russo said, there was concern at town meeting about how much this new contract is compared to what our old one was. I think those arguments have been gone over. There's a lot of new costs since we bid a contract 5 years ago, a lot of new state laws, a lot of things that are going to help, like better pay and training for the drivers, which I support, and that does cost money. But the concerns that people have about the references and other things we need to look into more in order to be able to feel comfortable awarding either this low bid or the other bid, the second bid. We are going to schedule another school committee meeting on July 9th. Is that at 7 o'clock? It will, will four of us be here?
I'm available.
Yeah, okay. And in the meantime, various people will take care of those other things. Mr. LeBray will be available as well. Is there anything else that I haven't reviewed that people feel we should state?
No, but I'd like to ask one more
Okay.
question. If you get any further information, would you please forward it to us by then?
I will, through the superintendent.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. And
Did you make the motion to
we have a
table?
motion.
Motion
Oh,
to
she's
table.
I'll second that
so
motion.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? It's 401. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next item on our agenda would be to go back to our communications topic. And that would be the ISAC committee. Mr. Cuna, if you could, well, I actually was contacted by someone about the ISAC committee. I didn't know what it was. Mr. Cuna's been on it, and there's been public, in the newspapers, requests for people in Burlington to join the ISAC committee. So I'm wanting to know more about what Mr. Cuna's been doing and whether we as a committee feel we should be sending a representative, which I believe we're entitled to. So do we want to have Mr. Cuna at the table? So Mr. Cuna, if you could fill us in there.
First, for anyone who doesn't know, ISAC is the Information Systems Advisory Committee, and the intent of that is to have applicants who are not town employees be on the board to then provide assistance and advice for such technology questions, technology purchasing, things like that. So in previous years, there's been multiple revisions of the ISAC committee. Once when we had the Sun donations prior to my time as employed here. A few years ago, around 2012, ISAC committee came back together as well to look at the infrastructure of the town and to see where we're at with cybersecurity, backups, internet, and things like that. As you may remember, there was a 212 or 287-page report that was done from an outside company. That was not ISAC who did that report, but it was ISAC's advisory role to look at that report and to decipher it with myself and other members of the IT department, but then also to go forward to town meeting for any funding requests. This request is exactly that same scenario, not a 287-page report, but to get outside community members who are in the technology field already, who have expertise, to meet with the IT department, review some of our practices, some of our technologies in place, and look at our 5- and 10-year plans. And then if there are deficiencies or they're happy where everything is, to make recommendations and provide a summary report at a later town meeting date. Now that summary report could at that point ask for more funding for a larger report, more technology, more software, more equipment, or it could say glowing reviews and everything's great. So I think what happened is last night at a Board of Selectmen meeting, they had 7 people who had submitted applications to be part of that team. And that was last night, and there were discussions on that. I believe they're still accepting applications, but when these meetings are scheduled, there will be a representative, multiple representatives from the IT department on both the town and the school side. However many members are picked for the ISAC committee, and it's not always a closed meeting depending on the topic. They may be open to the public, unless we're talking specific security concerns, we may close those discussions.
So my major question then is, it was my understanding that there may be one or more select people or other boards who are going to be represented on it. And I certainly feel like you, as our representative, and other members of our IT department, as you see fit, will represent us and would give us information. But if you felt there was a need for an elected official from the school department to participate, I just wanted us to have that conversation. I mean, the staff certainly know more about this, but it's about cybersecurity and things like that, right?
Yeah, I'm not questioning anyone's knowledge of cybersecurity or technology on this
Please do.
board.
You should.
Yeah.
But I believe.
You can
when-
certainly question Mr. Murphy.
No.
Stop shaking your head.
What I believe is ISAC reports to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
So by that being the case, any reports, information, and so forth will go back to them. But that doesn't mean it's exclusive only to look at Board of Selectmen departments. It will look at school, police, fire, everything, for any type of deficiencies or pros.
So, Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, I didn't do any research on this, but usually these types of committees are a creature of town meeting. It's either a standing committee or it's an ad hoc committee. Ad hoc committees are generally committees that are set up for just a short-term specific purpose, and then standing committees are set up to be there whenever we need them. They're ongoing. They don't need to be reappointed by the town moderator. I don't know if this is a standing committee that's just totally, continues to be in existence, and if it is, normally, the town bylaws will say who's on them. So we might not have the authority to put anybody on unless we go back and do a little research. Tom, do you know about that?
You're right. I think this ISAC committee came into when the Sun money came
Yeah.
up.
They did.
And we felt we had to put something in place to figure out how we spend the money that Sun was gonna be donating to the town. And I can't remember whether we the ones that came up with that idea, or the selectmen, or whatever. I just don't
I think it
remember.
was a
Mr.
joint.
Cunha, is it, to your understanding, is it a town meeting committee? Or is
No.
it a town departments, committee?
It's neither one.
Right, so it used to be, my understanding prior to me was that it was a standing committee. But
Of what?
from town meeting when they accepted
Town
the
meeting,
Sun
okay.
donations. But after a few years, there was less interest in keeping that going, so it was dismembered. Then in 2012, is that the wrong term? Not dismembered? No?
Disbanded. That's good.
Disbanded? Sorry.
You were really, you were really upset with them, huh?
Disband.
We need to laugh.
Okay.
I'll make a note to myself. 2012, then the committee, Board of Selectmen actually decided to bring it back into the public's eye, and then elected 5 people to that committee, advisory committee then. Same thing roughly about 3 or 4 years later,
The selectmen appointed them?
Selectmen appointed
Okay,
them.
so it's just,
Yeah.
it's probably a
It's a
standing
select
committee.
Subcommittee really
So,
kind of a
in the, given that it's gotten late, we could hear all kinds of details about the history, but I'd like to then suggest that we probably don't need
We
to
don't.
appoint someone.
Agreed.
That we will expect you, Mr. Cunha, to give us reports as needed. And if there ever were a situation where you felt it would be important for one of us to represent, you could bring that to us in your report as well. Okay? Everyone comfortable with that?
Great.
Okay. So now we go to old business, and the first item is elementary school building needs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At your chairs, I just started putting some configuration options in place. I did commit to having the elementary building needs to be a standing agenda item, so you're going to see that on every agenda. And we'll probably schedule, again, more structured time for some of the conversations when we have a lot to go through. But I want to make sure that we don't restart a lot of the conversation. So with Patrick's help, we're going to set up an area space, Google space, Mr. Murphy.
Is
that
that
you
gonna
will.
be in the cloud?
Yes, it'll be in the
It's gonna
cloud.
be on your
Excellent.
Etch-a-Sketch.
That we will give you all access to, that it will be a repository of information. And so the first thing I just wanted to start with as an example was at your table, I just want to talk about the possible configuration options that are out there. And we can then add to those. We can ask a lot of people for their input. So again, the 4 that I just did as an example off the top of my head, and I didn't list any pros and cons, but we'll continue to do this and we'll accumulate information again, so we don't need to restart every time, is we could keep the current 4-school, 4-site configuration. That's a possibility. These are just examples, Mr. Eiler, so I don't have one for you, but again, it's very straightforward. We could convert Pine Glen to a pre-KK early childhood center, and then the 3 other elementary schools would be configured for grades 1 through 5. Again, a third option would be Pine Glen could be converted to a grade 5 academy, and the
that
3
one off.
elementary schools could be configured for grade K through 4. Mrs. Monaco, I know how you feel.
Okay.
It's still an option.
No, it isn't. Take it
No
off.
option, okay, we'll take it right off. And then 4 would maintain a 4-school configuration, but build 2 elementary schools on the Fox Hill site with shared common spaces, so we would have 2 principals. Again, essentially, they'd function as 2 schools, but probably have some common areas. And there are some schools, communities who've done this. And then we would give up the Pine site, so even though we would maintain 4 elementary schools, we would keep 3 sites. The point of listing these and others as we talk to people is that at some point, we don't need to research every single one. If one, like the grade 5 academy, is not.
It's already off. We're already
is-
down
ne-
one.
Needs to be dismembered, then we will dismember it at that time. And then,
Consider it dismembered.
and then we won't spend any more time on it. So again, the point of tonight is to, again, just to inform the committee that this is going to be a standing agenda item. We will create the space for documentation and maybe even some research. We'll create space for comments. We can even open up some of those comments for public input if you'd like to see that. And then if there's an option or 3 that you want to see more research done at, then that might shape a future warrant or process where we might bring someone in to do some background work, or if there's a community that has one of these particular configurations, like 2 elementary schools with shared common spaces, that we may want to have someone either visit us to present, or bring in the designer, or even take a visit ourselves, where we can go and look at some of the pros and cons. So, again, I just want to make sure we're making progress, and that this topic continues to be on the forefront of what we're discussing, because if we are rejected again from the high school renovation in December, and we so choose to use enrollment as a factor, given that we have modular classrooms in play at Fox Hill currently, essentially then we would need to shift our focus between essentially January and early April for a new statement of interest. And that statement of interest, again, doesn't need to be fully formed, but certainly the configuration would be something we would need to have discussed and settled on.
So, yeah, Mr. Nelson.
Just a quick request. I believe in the master plan that was done several years ago, one of the configurations was a 3-school elementary. I'd just like to see some input on that.
There you go. See.
As well, if we're gonna go on the cloud, see what people think about it. I know what your position is on it, Dr. Conti.
It'll be as
But
big as
it's in the
high
master
school.
plan, so I'd like to see people look at it and tell us why they don't like it, or tell us why they might like it.
And
do-
that's the one where we would have one elementary
One
school
large
would
elementary
be
school.
800 or 900
Fox Hill.
students.
Yes.
Okay.
And Bob, we have the master plan digitally? We should be able to get it, right? So we can even put that on this site as well. So if anyone wants to look at it, we can put it there. I just want one place where people can go to, especially you all, and that we're not restarting these conversations all the time.
Mrs. Monaco.
Would, if we, and I don't approve of it, but if we did one school, would it be as big number-wise, population-wise, as the middle school?
Yeah, probably, fairly close.
Yeah, it's too big.
Well, I'm saying Pine Glen has about 300 in it now. Fox Hill has close to, is growing towards 500, so.
Yeah, talking 900 kids.
Yeah, and we would want to give some room, so we're probably talking 900 students.
Okay, there won't be
So,
any difficulty getting
Isn't that the way they do it down in Virginia?
They do have some schools. My last district had a 900-student elementary school, and again, it may be a efficient space, but operationally, which we spend much more on operations than we do on construction, it's really hard to have a 7 or 8 number of sections in a grade level to form specialists, because then it's not very efficient. So again, Francis Wyman, a five-section school on a 5-day rotation is sort of efficient from a programmatic perspective. If you're trying to do an 8 or 9-section school on a 5-day rotation, then you may need 2 gyms. There's a lot of other things that come into play in terms of how we do things. I'm sorry, someone else had a comment. So.
Yeah, Mr. Murphy.
Not so much a comment as a request, and not for myself, but for Mr. Nelson. If you do whatever you're gonna do to
Yes.
put it wherever you're gonna put it, will somebody create very precise step-by-step directions on how somebody who might not be as proficient as others?
We will do that for Mr.
Find
Nelson,
that.
yes. I know you're speaking on his behalf.
I didn't want to embarrass him by
I know.
making him ask.
And I'm just going to say, that's true friendship, Mr. Nelson, and it takes bravery to step up for a friend like that, Mr.
Could
Murphy.
you put the directions on an etch-a-sketch?
Yes, we can do that as well.
I also just want to add that when we talk about pros and cons, I want us to focus a lot on education, but I also know we need to also look at financial pros and cons, because some of these options may be less expensive, but are they going to be a problem educationally? And that's the kind of questions I want to be asking. So those are the kind of pros and cons I'm hoping we'll be looking at. So I like this plan, and I think it's good. So does anyone else have any comments, or should we move on?
Move on.
Okay. So the next topic is the discussion again about the policy manual review. It's my understanding that in general, people feel that it's a good idea to be reviewing at least some of our policies. So I want to open it up to people who may have suggestions about a procedure that we would go with and how we want to proceed.
So,
Dr.
again,
Conti.
Madam Chair, just to
Yeah.
maybe jumpstart the conversation, I think you all met Dorothy Presser and familiarized yourselves with some of the services that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees could provide. So you're familiar with that. If that's not an option that is decided on by this committee, again, that's fine with me. I just want to stress that we do need to continue to look at policies moving forward, whether with MASC or even with this committee itself. So I just think, I need to help facilitate that. So I really want to know the committee's thoughts on, again, every third meeting, do we put an agenda item on? Do we break this into smaller pieces? Like, again, we're not going to accomplish it all in 3 meetings. I realize that, or even
300 meetings.
or even 3 years. But I do think we have to commit to a sort of review process that is reasonable and that allows us to continue to do that, given we have a lot of other things going on. So, even if we want to look at some, again, quarterly, I just want there to be some discipline to what we're doing. And again, that doesn't mean sort of every meeting, or I don't have a timeline in my head. I just think if we let it go, and it's easy to let go, it takes us long to get back to it. So that's all I'm trying to ask.
Mr. Murphy.
First, before giving my opinion on that, in reviewing the minutes from a couple of meetings ago, and this gets back to, there was a little bit of a discussion when the woman from MASC appeared last time, and I think we owe the chair a little bit of an apology, clarify some misunderstanding, because according to the minutes of the previous meeting, Chair Simon suggested that Dory Preston make a 20-minute presentation. So that's something that was clearly discussed initially, so I just wanted to point that out for the record.
Thank you.
But getting on to the subject at hand, I don't know, frankly, and she seemed like a very nice person. I'd rather do something as the superintendent just suggested, periodically, whether it's by every other meeting or whatever. And, we've got a whole pile of policies, 95% of which we're never gonna ever look at, and nothing will ever come up to, they become an issue. So I'd almost rather identify areas, if we can do this, areas that are more likely than not to be things that we, the financial policies are obviously an example. And maybe a couple other and if you have areas or subject matters that you think are more important or more relevant than others, and then pick 10 of them, however many, every other one, just put them in our paperwork. We can go through them. If anything jumps out at anybody as this is outdated, or we don't even need this anymore, then we can kind of do it piecemeal and keep it going.
May I respond, Madam Chair? I just think, Ms. Murphy, a part of me really likes Mrs. Russo's suggestion where, just because it's concrete, we can look through and look at our sort of oldest policies first,
I'm fine
and
with
then, again, they may just need to be reaffirmed. So they might have been initially adopted when the law changed, or the regulation changed in 1987, and then nothing's changed, and it's a policy in good standing, then all you would need to do is just say, we reaffirm it in 2019.
Yep.
And then we can go from there, and that gives, I think, us, and I'm saying us looking at Sharon, sort of a concrete pathway, and I
Okay.
think then we can make the pace a little bit manageable for everybody, if that might make sense.
I'm fine with that.
And again, I want to make sure I give Mrs. Russo full credit for that.
Nominated.
We'll call it the Russo.
Mrs. Monaco?
I think if you ask Sharon to drag out the policies by age, it's going to be a lot of work. One of my suggestion,
Okay.
and I offered to do this with Martha, is if we take one section, and I don't care which section, there's a whole bunch of them, but if you take a section at a time and you go through it and you find a group that need to be reaffirmed, and then you find a group that need to be updated or something changed, I think if we could do it that way and bring it to the committee, we'd have, okay, let's reaffirm this group of policies and maybe work on this other group, but one section at a time, so that we're not all over the book.
Sure.
And the other thing I would say is that if anyone on the committee finds a policy or comes across a policy that they think needs immediate attention, that we just take it out of order and give it immediate attention. So that's just my suggestion.
No, I like that. So it's section which narrows down the search, and then we can go from that section to sort of dates first, so we're not looking through the entire manual. I
And
think-
Sharon doesn't have to do all the work.
No, I get it. So then, but I think if we can gather that and get it to you, I think honestly, a lot of the work is gonna be reaffirmation.
Of course, we
and then-
charge hourly, you know.
Okay, and then some.
I would just like to confirm, when we say "we," we're talking about Mrs. Monaco.
Yes, that's the proverbial.
And Martha.
Well, yeah, and so well, did you want to speak at this point? I like this idea, and I think that if Mrs. Monaco and I look through sections, and I would ask Dr. Conti maybe, I have looked over the full range of types of policies, but it was a while ago. But there are different sections like governance and health and stuff. And if you could pick the sections that you feel would be the most important, then maybe Mrs. Monaco and I could begin to look at them and then bring forward, as she said, ones to be reaffirmed, ones to be changed. If we needed additional help, Mr. Larkin said he would be available, but I don't know, maybe you and I, he would give a different perspective to work as sort of that subcommittee, or we could do it just the two of us.
The way we've done it
Okay.
in the past is Sharon would photocopy a section. She'd make 2 copies, give one to you, give one to me.
Okay,
You and I would each go through our own, come up
Okay.
with a list. You'd say,
Okay.
I think these need to be
okay.
modified. I'd say, no, they don't, just reaffirm them.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, we'd get together on what we think, and then it would come back to the committee through Sharon, sort of.
So would people like to go that way?
Just a brief comment, Madam
Yes,
Chairman?
Mr. Nelson?
Not to be a naysayer, but I think that there's an awful lot on the administration's plate right now. I think that our focus as a committee should be on solving the elementary school problem and getting funding for a new elementary school, and then solving the high school, not necessarily in that order, solving the high school problem. I don't think the superintendent should be spending 2 minutes going through an old policy manual. I think that's the
agree.
job of the school committee.
Okay.
They're our policies, And if the two of you are willing to sit on a subcommittee and go through that, I think that's wonderful. But I think it's an awful lot of energy and taking away from other areas that we could be really, I think, spending our time more effectively.
It'll be a slow pace, we'll do a
Yeah.
section.
But I don't think
we'll get
Dr.
to
Conti
another
should be
section.
doing it.
No, I agree.
He's got enough to do. I don't want to have him
And I
going
don't
through
think
our manuals.
Sharon should be spending a ton of time either, which is why I think
Yeah.
we can do it.
Although, actually, I think, Dr. Conti benefits from this, and if he has priorities, that I would want to know. If
Oh,
he
he'll
says,
tell us.
if he's, I'd like you to tell us, you'd really like us to start with section 4, and then the rest of them we can do in any order.
yeah.
But, so I do want Dr. Conti's input.
Sure.
Okay,
Happily provide.
all right. Are there any other suggestions? Mrs. Monaco and I will figure out later when to get in touch, okay?
I think it's probably going to have to wait until September, because Sharon's busy, I'm away.
Well, I'm willing to make copies if that's what it takes, because in summers when I have time
Yeah.
to do this, and we can just pick one section.
I'll have a chance to do that before the end of the summer.
One section
Yeah, so I'll.
before the
I'll
end
get
of
started.
June, you mean? Or summer?
No, June, not before the end of June.
No,
in June.
I'm
No,
sorry.
he means
I'm
before the end
sorry.
of the
I-
summer.
So, probably,
Later in the summer.
we'll get through the transportation.
Yep.
Probably by our August meeting, I'll have some
Okay.
suggestions,
All right, good,
so we can do that.
all right.
That'd be great.
Good, all right. Next is new business. So we have the capital warrant article project closeout approval.
Yes, we had one that we needed a correction on. Remember, you had closed out 3 of the 4. The last one in the school committee is being requested to close out the complete Pine Glen walk-in refrigerator freezer project warrant article with a remaining of $32,793.14, and that is the correct number. So I'm just recommending school committee close out the Pine Glen walk-in refrigerator freezer project warrant article for $32,793.14.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The chair votes aye, that's 500.
Thank you.
Okay.
And again, I appreciate everyone's comments on the transportation contract. I think we've covered that fully. And I will contact Darren quickly and try to move that forward. My understanding is we don't need any budget transfers this evening, so again, that's not needed at this time.
So, and it's my understanding that if it turns out well, first of all, let me ask a question. Ms. Kasha, at this point, we have 5 days left in the fiscal year. Obviously, you don't have all the invoices, and you won't on June 30th, but what's your assessment of the fiscal year 19 budget?
We're going to have no issues closing out
Great.
the year.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And then in July, if there is a need for budget transfers, you will let us know. Is that correct? That's how
Yes.
we're going to handle it? Okay, great. Any other comments on that item? Yes,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Eiler.
Thank you. Just sort of 2 related financial things. I guess the first one was, just thank you, Dr. Conti, for the explanation on the tutor versus the teacher lane change thing. That was helpful. There's 2 other outstanding things we had. One was converting all the departments over to the electronic PO system. I was just curious what the status of that was, or is.
Again, it's still in process, so we are sort of fully staffed, and I know it's been a few months, but we are getting the financial analyst trained and used to our systems, and I think that's happening. And again, I don't want to speak for Ms. Kasha, but they're traveling to all the schools this week, and so they're going to be meeting the buildings where this work is going to take place, and I think they're going to do some introductions, because not everyone knows each other, and then they're going to start putting together a training schedule for that conversion. So I think there have been some departments that have been done, the large departments, and I don't want to.
Yes.
I know athletics is one, is that correct?
Athletics, special education, pretty much all of central office.
So again, I think we're making good progress, and we'll continue to make progress.
Okay. And then the other one was just from last meeting, the Powers and Sullivan audit status.
Uh-huh.
Are they ever going to finish?
Again, I think we've
Very
we've re-
good
we've
question.
reached out to Powers and Sullivan, and I think we have, again, I'll be corrected if I'm incorrect, but we have 2 agreed-to procedures that are pending. One is the revolving accounts. I think he was going to look at, not all of them, but I think our top 6 or biggest 6 revolving accounts. And then he was going to review our financial procedures that we had put in place. The Powers has come out to the district. We provided them all the information that they've requested, and I think we're just waiting for the final write-up. And unless there's an update or status at this point?
No, so in, last month, I reached out to them, and their response was that they're still in the review stage, but they're done with all of their on-site, so.
Have we asked them for what date they expect to know, rather than leaving it open-ended?
I think we've called and said we would like the work, and honestly, I'd like the work for several reasons. I'd like to see the results. I also think the improvements have been significant, so I'd also like to have that confirmed by our auditor. So I'd like to have him here as soon, or sooner than you would, Mr. Eiler. So again, we are asking. It's not like we are not asking. I can certainly ask for a firm date if that would help us along. But he's aware of our desire to get our agreed-to procedures returned.
As you know, sometimes having an actual deadline makes people a little more happy than they might be otherwise.
Yes. Again, and I just, to defend Mr. Powers, he's been very attentive. The staff did come out, they looked at everything, and so, again, it's not, I don't think it's lack of peppiness. I honestly think they're trying to do a really thorough job, as they always do, and we'll get the reports and get them to the committee as soon as we receive them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments on that? Okay. So the next item is Dr. Conti's annual evaluation. And to explain for people who are not familiar, the process is that each school committee member has to complete an end-of-cycle summative evaluation report, which is a requirement from the state. They give us a rubric that we need to follow with certain specifics in terms of goals, in terms of process, and in terms of ratings. Each of us has done that and submitted that along with comments. And then it's my job as chair this year to summarize and compile those findings and report out at this meeting what the school committee's summative cumulative evaluation report is. Like I said, it's a rubric with a lot of categories, and I think what I'm going to do is go through the check-off boxes, and then I will read the text of comments regarding all of these categories. So overall, they ask us to assess the progress toward goals. So for Dr. Conti's professional practice goal, everyone felt he had met those. Student learning goals he has met, and the district improvement goals he has met. Then we also have 4 standards that we look at, and the instructional leadership was found to be exemplary, his management and operations proficient, the family and community engagement standard was proficient, and the professional culture was exemplary. So overall, those I put them together, and his overall summative performance was proficient. They also ask what his impact on student learning has been, and it was unanimous that he has a very high impact on student learning and very positive. Under the, so the professional practice goal number 1 was on relationships, and the district initiative was regarding communication, collaboration, and cultural competence. That was, we felt he exceeded the goal. The student learning is for district initiatives and engaged learning regarding involved social emotional learning, inclusion, with the new programs planned especially at MSMS and BHS for September, targeted instruction for ELA, math, and social emotional learning, PBIS, which is Positive Behavioral Intervention Systems, is that right? Did I get that acronym right? And the new Massachusetts Computer Science for All, and the new seal of biliteracy. And we rated him exceeded on that as well. For the district improvement goals, there were two. One was regarding student safety, a memorandum of understanding with the police department, the youth risk behavior survey, and adding a school culture survey on the years when the YRBS is not administered, and he's met that goal. And under district operations, the updated policies and procedures, he has also met that goal. For instructional leadership, I have to say that this can be confusing because those were performance goals, and now we have performance ratings for the standards. So under instructional leadership, he received 4 out of 5 areas were exemplary, so overall exemplary. For management and operation, 4 out of 5 areas were proficient, 1 was exemplary, so he received a proficient rating for that. For family and community engagement, he received 2 exemplary ratings and 2 proficient, and that came out to proficient. And for professional culture, he had 4 exemplary and 2 proficient ratings, so that was an overall exemplary rating. For the comments, I tried to summarize, and I used some of the words from everybody's. Each member of the committee is represented in this text that I'm going to read now, and some of it repeats those standards, but this is more of a narrative. I have to say that being a former special ed teacher, this reminds me of writing IEPs with these standards and goals. The role of the superintendent is broad and deep. Dr. Conti continues to show outstanding skill in managing our school district and providing leadership across the range of areas he must lead. He addresses problems with transparency, initiative, and a commitment to finding what is best for all students. This has gained him enthusiastic support and appreciation from the school committee. Relating to the professional practice goal of relationships and the student learning goal of engaged learning, school committee members were split evenly that they believe he has met or exceeded his goal. His focus is on student learning. Dr. Conti recognizes talented staff and allows them to design, implement, and reflect on curriculum, making it stronger and more meaningful. Staff curriculum work in English learners, in the English Learner Department, and the planned implementation of the new Computer Science for All and Computer Science Innovation Path at Burlington High School are 2 examples of his curricular and instructional leadership. Under the district improvement goal, he met or exceeded the sub-goal for student safety, and under the sub-goal of updated policies, the ratings were split between significant progress and met. After a problematic transition from a previous business manager to our new business manager, Dr. Conti accepted responsibility for the fiscal overrun last year. He was transparent about the problem, showed leadership to find a good solution, and managed the fiscal 2019 budget successfully. He provided additional staff in the business office this year, and the district is moving forward with our new fiscal procedures. From the management and operations standard, he was rated overall proficient, and under the sub-area of fiscal systems, comments were made about the need for him to continue to ensure the fiscal stability and accuracy of the district. Overall, Dr. Conti was rated generally as exemplary by the committee for the standards of instructional leadership and professional culture. He has created a positive and productive professional culture. He was rated overall proficient for the standard of family and community engagement. Dr. Conti leads by example, and most teachers, based on a survey that we put out, respect Dr. Conti and have a positive opinion on his performance and efforts. Making sure that all children and families feel welcome in the Burlington Public Schools is a priority and a strength of his. Dr. Conti shows concern for students, staff, and families. He addresses issues in an educationally sound, fair, and caring manner. He has also cultivated partnerships with many local businesses and organizations to develop worthwhile educational experiences for our students. The new website this year is a great improvement and will be a helpful tool for communication with all stakeholders. On behalf of the school committee, I want to thank you for all of what you do on behalf of our students in Burlington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the effort that you all put into the evaluation. I think the process is a challenge, and I hope it doesn't get in the way of us just having conversations when they're needed. Any superintendent performance, from my perspective, is the reflection of the work of others. Many of the things you mentioned this evening are due to just the outstanding people we have working here. Our teachers work just incredibly hard. They had just a great year. Our principals, our support staff, and I especially want to thank the central office staff here tonight, Mr. Cuna, Ms. Kasha, and Mr. Larkin. I think they just have wonderful people working for them. If there was a challenging performance in the district over the last 2 years, it was really my own. So I think they've made up a lot of ground for me, and I think that there's a quote by Teddy Roosevelt that I really like. It says, if you could kick the person in the pants responsible for most of your troubles, you wouldn't sit for a month. So understand that I have some improving to do. I'll continue to do that. I appreciate the continued support of the school committee, and I really love what I do. I think this community is just a great place to work, and I just look forward to trying to again, get better every year, and to make sure the children of Burlington have every opportunity that's available to them. And again, I can't do it without just the exceptionally talented people that we have working in the district. And honestly, that really stems from the values that you all express in focusing on the whole child and making sure that we do the best for kids whenever we can. And so that's a high standard for us all to meet. So thank you all very much, and thank you to everyone here. So.
Great, thank you. Doesn't look like we have any further public participation. And the committee has a need tonight for executive session to discuss contract negotiations and approval of minutes. The school committee will only return to public session for the purpose of adjournment. We have to discuss these matters in executive session because to discuss them publicly would jeopardize the position of the body. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Russo?
Aye.
Mr. Nelson?
Aye.
Mrs. Monaco?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. We are now in executive session.